Hello, welcome to English with BDM and I am B. Mandal. In this video, I am going to point out some important features of the complex sentence. A complex sentence is one that contains one principal clause and one or more subordinate clauses. In sentence number 1, the principal clause is the teacher said, and the subordinate clause that the earth moves around the sun. In sentence 2, she could not attend the seminar is the principal clause, and because she was ill is the subordinate clause. In sentence 3, the principal clause is no sooner had the rain ceased, and the subordinate clause then she stepped out. In sentence 4, do you know is the principal clause, and the subordinate clause is where the man lives. And in sentence 5, please tell me is the principal clause, and where the man lives is the subordinate clause. Now the word, usually the first word of the subordinate clause. This word introduces the subordinate clause, and it also connects it to the principal clause. And the word is called connective, commonly called connective. So in the first sentence, that is the connective. In the second one, because. In the third one, then. And in 4 and 5, where is the connective. So a connective is a part of the subordinate clause. It has two functions. Number 1, it introduces the subordinate clause, and number 2, it connects the subordinate clause to the principal clause. The second point is that, like a simple sentence, a complex sentence can be declarative, interrogative, imperative, etc. So sentence number 1, 2, and 3 are declarative complex sentences. The principal clause, the teacher said, is declarative. She could not attend the seminar is declarative, both in form and meaning. Sentence number 3, the principal clause no sooner had the rain ceased is declarative. But in sentence number 4, the principal clause contains a question. It is interrogative in form and meaning. In 5, the principal clause is imperative, both in meaning and form. And so the category or class of the whole complex sentence is totally determined only by the category of the principal clause. So when the principal clause is declarative, the whole complex sentence is declarative. When the principal clause is interrogative, the whole complex sentence is interrogative, as sentence number 4. The principal clause is interrogative, so the whole complex sentence is interrogative, and accordingly the punctuation mark at the end of the sentence also depends on the category of the principal clause, that is the category of the whole complex sentence. Now when we make a question, when we form an interrogative sentence, we usually place the helping verb before the subject. It is called inversion, as explained in our previous video. But sometimes in declarative sentence too, we can use the inversion, had the rain ceased, just like an interrogative sentence, but it is not an interrogative sentence. We use the inversion in declarative sentences to lay extra emphasis on the verb in the clause. Now the last one is an imperative complex sentence, because the principal clause is imperative. There is a request in it. But a very important point, whatever may be the category or class of the principal clause, that is the class of the whole complex sentence. The subordinate clause is always only declarative in form. So we cannot say, do you know where the man lived? Where does the man live? We cannot say, do you know where does the man live? We cannot use the inversion in the subordinate clause. It will be a completely incorrect sentence. So be careful when you form a subordinate clause, particularly in an interrogative complex sentence. Do not use the inversion in the subordinate clause. Now, the next important point, next important feature of the complex sentence is the sequence of tenses. The sequence of tenses. The sequence of tenses is a set of rules according to which the tense of the finite verb of the principal clause determines, controls the tense of the finite verb in the subordinate clause. She said that she had won the first prize. She said that she had won the first prize. The principal clause, she said, the verb is in the past tense. So the verb in the subordinate clause is also in the past tense. Here it is in the past perfect tense because the action of this verb had taken place before the action of the verb to say. Now we cannot say she said that she has won the first prize, even though the prize is still in her possession. We cannot say she said that she has won the first prize. As the verb in the principal clause is in the past tense, the verb in the subordinate clause is to be in some form of past tense. It may be simple past, past progressive, past perfect progressive. It may be modal past like would write, would be writing, would have written, would have been writing, etc. according to the situation, according to the context. It is rule number one of the sequence of tenses that when the finite verb of the principal clause is in the past tense, the finite verb in the subordinate clause is in some kind of past tense. This rule has two major exceptions. Exception number one, if the subordinate clause contains a general truth, it is always in the simple present tense, even though the finite verb in the principal clause is in the past tense, as in example number one. The teacher said is in the past tense, but still then the verb in the subordinate clause is in the simple present tense moves, because there is a general truth, a universal truth in the subordinate clause. Exception number two is that if there is a prevailing habit, a habit that still exists, a habit that is pursued by the person concerned in the subordinate clause, we also use the simple present tense, though the verb in the principal clause is in the past tense. My friend told me that his grandfather gets up early in the morning every day. My friend told is in the past tense, yet we use the simple present tense gets up because the habit is still prevailing. His grandfather still now gets up early in the morning. The second rule of the sequence of tenses is that if the verb in the principal clause is not in the past tense, that is, if it is in the present or in the future tense, the verb in the subordinate clause may be any tense according to the meaning, according to the context. As I know, now is simple present tense in the principal clause. I know that he came here last week. The verb came in the subordinate clause in the past tense. I know that he will come here next week. Will come is future simple tense. I know that he comes here once every week. Comes is simple present tense. So these are important features, important grammar points regarding the complex sentence. They are important in themselves because we must master them to make and use correct complex sentences in our conversation and writing. But these points are important, also important from another point of view. These points of grammar are closely related. These features of the complex sentence are closely related to the rules for changing direct speech to indirect speech. When we change direct speech to indirect speech, the sentence is most often a declarative complex sentence. Look at this sentence. She said that she had won the first prize. Perhaps you have already understood that this one is an indirect speech sentence. But at the same time, it is a complex sentence, a declarative complex sentence. She said is the principal clause. That she had won the first prize is the subordinate clause. So, an indirect speech sentence is very often, rather most often, a declarative complex sentence. The reporting clause becomes the principal clause of the complex sentence, and the sentence within quotes, the actual direct speech, becomes the subordinate clause of the complex sentence. The direct form of the speech was I won or have won. The first prize. The reporting clause, the introductory clause, becomes the principal clause of the complex sentence, and the direct speech, the actual direct speech, the sentence within quotes, becomes the subordinate clause of the complex sentence. And as there must be a connective to introduce the subordinate clause, we bring in the conjunction that here, because there is no such word here as can be used as a connective. So I here draw your attention to the fact that, to the point that when you change speech from direct to indirect, in most of the cases, the sentence in the indirect speech is a declarative complex sentence. I will explain all the related points when I discuss the rules for changing speech in the near future. I have given here a list of connectives usually commonly used in complex sentences. These connectives do not belong to the same category. They are of different categories. I will discuss them, show their differences and similarities in a different video. We can drop the connective in a few specific cases. I will also talk about them in a short video in the future. That is all about grammar today. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to the channel to get early notification of the latest videos. See you. Goodbye.